In this video, we will first see the method for the Rapporteur Member State to update the gap overview file once other Member States have submitted their authorized gap and the data supporting them. In the second time, we will see how to use a functionality that allows exporting automatically the critical gaps from a finalized gap overview file to a blank profile. This corresponds to the step 5 of the MRL review of an active substance. Please be aware that in this video, we will not deal with the creation of a gap overview file by the Rapporteur Member States at the step 3 of the MRL review. If you want some information on this step, you can consult the work instruction available on the EFSA website. If you need more details, a video caption of a training conducted by EFSA on this step is available on EFSA extranet. We start with the method to update the gap overview file. At the beginning of this step, the following files are available: the gap overview file in its version agreed on with EFSA and circulated to Member States during data collection, the evaluation reports from Member States that were asked to either clarify the authorized gap or submit data to support the authorized gap. Open the gap overview file. Please note that this tutorial only applies to the version of the gap overview file that includes the buttons Automatic Outcome after Data Call and Export CGAPs to Profile. Please also note that it is crucial to check that the macros are enabled or the file will not work. Therefore, you should check for any yellow bar like this one in the upper left of your Excel window. Go to the column X and set the filter to N for No. Only the gaps that need clarification are displayed. Go through the evaluation report of the corresponding member state. Update the corresponding gaps. If the gap is clear, put a Y in column X. Once all gaps are clarified, go to column Z and set the filter to N. Only the gaps that are not supported are displayed. Go through the evaluation reports of the corresponding member states. You have to decide whether the submitted data are sufficient to support the gap. You can exchange with EFSA and the concerned member state on that matter. If the available data support the gap, put a Y in column Z. Once you reviewed all data submitted to support the gaps, you can update the ranking for gaps. The aim of the ranking is to determine one unique critical gap for each crop per zone. This unique critical gap will be the one reported in the profile and therefore the one discussed in the reasoned opinion. In this first example, there are several gaps for one crop in one zone. If you go through the different parameters, there is one gap clearly more critical than the other. Rank this gap 1, the next critical one is rank 2, and so on. The gap ranked 1 will be the one exported to the profile for this crop and zone. In this second example, the same gap is reported in 3 countries for the same zone. In this case, attribute the rank 1 to all these gaps. This gap will be reported in the profile, and the countries from all gap ranked as 1 will be reported as well. In this third example, there is 2 gaps, each from 2 countries of the same zone, which are slightly different and no data are available to support this gap. In order to highlight the uncertainty of the ranking, you should use rankings with letter. The gap expected to be the more critical here is ranked as 1A and the other 1B. The gap 1A will be the one reported in the profile. In order to update the outcomes, click on this button. If there is no mistake, the program runs in the background and this message box pops on the screen indicating that everything is fine. If some issues are identified, they will be notified by message boxes. You can see a maximum of 3 successive boxes. In this example, a message box appears indicating that some gaps marked as relevant and clear were not ranked. If no rank is allocated, the gap will be considered by default as the least critical gap of the list. There is 2 buttons on the message box. Click on No and go to column Y where the rankings are, and filter by color since the issues are highlighted in orange. Here, the rankings have been omitted. Correct the error before clicking again on the button Automatic Outcome after data call. Similar messages will appear for other issues. Read the message and proceed to the correction. Bear in mind that some of these issues might be acceptable based on your expert judgment. In this case, when you click again on the button Automatic Outcome after data call, indicate that you want to proceed anyway when the message box appears by clicking the Yes button. At that point, your gap overview file is complete. Save a copy of a blank profile, preferably in the same folder that the gap overview file. Do not open the profile. In the gap overview file, click on the button Export Gaps to Profile. A window appears asking for the location of the blank profile. Select the file and click on Open. The program is then working in the background. It might take several minutes. Wait until this message box appears. Select the window of the profile. Click on the button Insert or Update Data in the Profile. Wait for the profile to proceed. The form Registered Uses is now visible. You can see that the crop, pitches in this example, on which critical gaps were identified in the gap overview file are already ticked. Click Go to Next Step. The details of the gaps have been exported in these lines. Since gaps from 3 member states were identified as a critical gap, the 3 member states were reported here. The same goes for pests and comments from these 3 gaps that were merged together. Please note that the other parameters of the gap are taken from the first line of the several gaps on the same crop and zone and that share the same rankings. In this case, the parameters from the Greek gap have been reported. You can now review the details of the gaps and correct if necessary. After that, you can proceed as you will normally do to complete the profile.